Hello everyone, welcome to Chehal's Zoology Lectures. If you like the content of this channel, please subscribe to this channel, and for further notifications, please hit the bell icon. So today we'll talk about chordates. Today we'll talk about functional morphology. So what is functional morphology? It is the study of relationship between the structure and function of morphological features of various body parts. You can clearly say that any morphology that will serve some specific function. And there is a famous idiom that forms follows function, or you can say function from form. That is the guiding principle of functional morphology, that any morphology, any specific form, it will serve some important function, specific function. So the function of an organ, appendage, tissue, or any other body part that dictates its form, so that is functional morphology. Now, the primary task of functional morphology is observing living organisms to see how they live and how they function. From observations of living organisms, scientists also attempt to discern the principles that will allow them to determine the function from the forms of fossils, such as bones and shells, or whatever happens to the preserved form, whatever happens to be preserved from organism that no longer exists. That means that functional morphology, when scientists study the functional morphology of the living organisms, it will also help to determine the functions of some specific features which are present in the fossils, in the organisms which are extinct now and which are now we observe those organisms as fossils. Functional morphology assumes an organism's morphology must serve a purpose. That means any structure which is present in the morphology of organism that should serve a specific purpose or a specific function that infer the function of the morphology. For example, a strange structure on a fossil. What was that? That was spines on the aperture of a gastropod. Like you can see here in this picture, there are spines, but these are not on the aperture of the gastropod. This is the aperture. Okay, so from where the organism which in-house in this shell can enter or leave the shell. So this aperture in a fossil, this aperture was lined by spines like these. Okay, so those spines, they must serve some specific function, and the snail must have been well developed. Okay, the organism must have been well developed because that spines here at the aperture, on the entry of the aperture. So what could be the function of those spines? Spines must have done their job well to deter the predators. That means that will keep away the predators from this organism. Those spines will halt any predator at the entry level. Okay, so there are different methods of study of functional morphology. One can be direct observation, other can be by studying homologous organs, other can be by studying analogous organ, the fourth one can be by studying convergent evolution or adaptive radiation, and the last one can be by studying biomechanical principles or biomechanical basics. Okay, so we'll discuss about these method of study one by one. So first is direct observation. By directly observing the function of any living creature, any living organism. For example, there is a famous example of industrial melanism in peppered moth. You can see here, this is example of peppered moth, that is Piston betullaria. That is a very famous case of industrial melanism in Britain. So this is dark colored moth, and this upper one is lighter moth. So initially this lighter moth was much more prevalent because the tree trunks were covered with lichen, which were having the same color as that of the moth, and this moth was invisible to the predators because of the similar color of lichens, and this color of this moth has helped in camouflage. Okay, now because of the industrial pollution, the lichens, they start dying out, and because lichens are you can also assume them as a kind of pollution indicators. So when the pollution will rise, lichens will die out automatically. So lichens die out, and the tree trunks, they will become they became uncovered of the lichens, and their dark color was on reveal, and then by mutation some of the light colored moths, they have changed their color to the darker side, and now these dark moths were invisible on the tree trunk because tree trunk was itself now dark, so they were having an advantage of their color. So here comes the principle of Darwin, survival of the fittest. So that moth, that dark moth was the fittest according to that conditions, so it survived. So that was a case of functional morphology, that its dark color has helped this organism to survive. Okay, so that is a real life adaptation, and that favored dark color moths during the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. Also, there is another case of Green River Formation. And what is this Green River Formation? That river that falls near Colorado and Ohio right now. So I'm not sure about Ohio, but yes, Colorado region that have this Green River zone. And what happens that this was a river which is formed of fresh water, of course, from the springs of the mountain region, and because it was rich in nutrient material, it allowed the plants to grow near its banks, and these plants grow so fast that ultimately they covered the whole river, the whole lake-like formation, and finally that formation is termed as Green River Formation because all the river was covered with plants all over, trees and plants, and their twigs and their leaves, they fall continuously in the river, and finally they were gathered around the surface, they accumulated on the surface, and finally they blocked the oxygen supply, and the organisms that were present in those in that water area, in that water body, that became fossilized. So in that Green River Formation there was obtained a fossil. You can see here that there is a fish. So that is a fish which is engulfing other fish. You can see here is a fish eye just below this marker, okay, this pointer, and here is the mouth of fish, and it is engulfing other fish. That means it clearly states that this fish was a carnivore fish. Larger fish was a carnivore fish because it has been fossilized with smaller fish in its mouth. So again, that is an example of functional morphology, and that is by direct observation in our own lifetime. Okay, then second method is study of modern relatives. That means to study modern relatives which are still present nowadays of some extinct organisms which have been fossilized long ago. So study living descendants to infer life habits of their ancestors. That means this approach is termed as modern analog approach. This is especially good when you are studying a living fossil. Now, what is a living fossil? Living fossils are organisms which have not changed from millions of years. We have not shown any different adaptation or any different evolution from their previous ancestors. Like you can say this Nautilus, this which is shown here in blue color. Okay, this Nautilus, and this is a living fossil because it has not changed or not evolved from the last 400 million years. Okay, so it has not changed even a little. So by studying this organism, which is still present, but the number is very much less, so it is present in less number, and so by studying this Nautilus, we can determine about the functional morphology of its extinct relatives or its extinct ancestors which have been fossilized now, which are termed as ammonites. So these three gray structures, these are ammonites, these are extinct relatives of this Nautilus, which is still present, and this is a living fossil. So by observing this, we can determine about the functional morphology of some parts of the body of these ammonites, which are its extinct ancestors. So now, what is a homologous organ which will tell us about any functional morphology of these four structures, ammonites as well as this Nautilus? What are homologous features, by the way? Homologous features are those features which have same logos. Logos means origin. Homo means same. Homo plus logos, same logos. That means same origin. They must have originated from same common source. That means same ancestor. But they can have slightly different functions. So Such organs are termed as homologous organs, or you can say homologous feature. So in this example, in the example of this modern nautilus, we can utilize the its functional morphology to determine about the functional morphology of its ancestors, which are termed as ammonites. So which homologous features we are going to discuss? That is presence of siphuncle. Now what is the siphuncle? You can see here siphuncle. It is a strand of tissue which will pass longitudinally through the shell of a cephalopod mollusk. So these are cephalopod mollusk. Okay, so why the name is cephalopod? Cephalo plus poda. Okay, cephalo means head, poda means legs. That means legs on head. Okay, you must be confused about this, but it has tentacles on its head which looks like legs. That's why its name is cephalopod. Okay, so that belongs to phylum Mollusca. That's why cephalopod mollusk. Now what is siphuncle? You can see there is this orange line shown. So that is siphuncle. Okay, so here is this orange line that is showing siphuncle, and this siphuncle in the case of nautilus is median. You can see it is located exactly in the midline. That's a strand of tissue, a pipe-like structure. Okay, and in case of ammonites, this is lateral, terminal. You can see that is near to the outer boundary or outer edge of the nautilus. You can see. Okay, in ammonites this is on the outer edge, and in nautilus it is in the median line. So the function of this siphuncle is same in both the cases, but location is a little bit different, but they are same. They have evolved from a common ancestor. So these are homologous structures and they clearly depicts their function. So they will help in knowing the functional morphology in their ancestor by studying in the living fossil which is present nowadays. What is the function of siphuncle? It is used primarily in emptying the water from the new chambers that the shell grow. You can see here is the internal structure. Now this boundary line, so this is showing ammonite. So this boundary line pipeline, you can see that is siphuncle. Okay, and that is moving towards the center of the shell after spirally twisting. Okay, and these are septas. Now these septas, that is a very interesting fact, that these septas are very much crazy and with different kind of markings and patterns, but these are very much similar in case of nautilus. These are crazy sutures and with different kind of markings and patterns in case of ammonites. You can see, so every ammonite it will be having a specific pattern on this shells, but nautilus it will be having simple lines which are concave generally. Okay, that is the internal structure, and this boundary pipeline that is termed as siphuncle, and that will help to empty out the water from the shells. Okay, so these are shells chambers. You can see these are the chambers which are separated by septa, and the organism that will inhabit in the outer chamber, organism will live in the outer chamber, and the internal chamber there will be mixture of argon and nitrogen, and that will help in the buoyancy of the organism, and that will help in the floating. Okay, so that was all about this siphuncle. Now the next example, the siphuncle will help in the buoyancy function of shell. So that is the homologous feature about which we were talking in case of nautilus and ammonites. So next is functional morphology in case of mussels and bivalves, you can say. So two living forms which are living very different life orientations, but still they can be connected to each other, they can be related to each other because of some homologous organs, which are in this case muscle scars and basal thread regions. Okay, so they can connect to their fossil forms, that yes, these are connected to these ancestors, these extinct organisms which are fossilized now. So what is basal thread? You can see here these root-like structures. These are basal threads with the help of which these bivalves can attach to a substratum, firmly attached to a substratum. And what are these muscle scars? Muscle scars, you can see these structures, these bean-like structure you can see. These are scars from where the adductor muscles have been attached. Now what are these adductor muscles? Adductor muscles are the muscles which will help the bivalve to close its two walls together firmly whenever any predator attack a bivalve during low tide. Okay, so these will be the bivalve, two shells of the bivalve, they will be attachedly close together firmly with the help of contraction of adductor muscles, and these adductor muscles are attached here. So these are muscle scars, and these plays a very important role in the classification of different species of muscles. Okay, their position, and these also correlate them with their ancestors, so that will also help in determining the functional morphology. These two structure, this vessel threads and these muscle scars. Okay, so that was about the study of modern relatives of some extinct organism. Okay, moving to the third part, that is study of analogous organs and convergent features. What are analogous organs? Ana plus logos. Logos means origin, ana means different. That means different logos, different origin. Organisms which have different origin, they do not share a common ancestor, but still they have some features which looks alike, which looks similar, and they also perform similar function. Like you can see here that a bird wing and a insect wing, they both look somewhat similar and they perform the similar kind of function. So that is again an example of functional morphology, that morphology that serves the same function. So morphology is also wing-like and the function is also same, to fly. Okay, they will help in fly. So that is another example of functional morphology. And one more example is of Apatosaurus. This organism is a Apatosaurus. You can see its long neck. What is the function of this long neck? It was predicted previously that long neck and large body, it was predicted that it will help in walking around in the fresh water. Its long neck will keep its mouth out of the water always for breathing purpose. And this was how this was determined, how this was predicted, by comparing its morphology to that of the elephants, that they keep their trunk out of the water, and because they were terrestrial, and these organisms are also reptiles, so these are also terrestrial. So whenever they will be in water, they will keep their neck outside the water. That's why they have a long neck, and their body is so stumpy and large, like hippos, to move in water whenever they are in water. So now elephants and hippos, they have different origin, and these organisms, they have different origin, different ancestor, but still they are being compared here for their functional morphology. So that is example of analogous organs, comparison of analogous organs which do not have same origin, but still they can be compared for knowing their functional morphology. Also, there are certain organisms which have large vertebrae with dorsal spines. And what is their function? For muscle attachment, especially in the case of terrestrial organism. Here you can see that is the vertebral column of some terrestrial organism, and that is having long dorsal spine. So these are vertebrae, 1 vertebrae, 2, 3, 4 and 5 and 6, and these are having dorsal spines. So these processes, these are spines, these are exceptionally long, and vertebrae are large, so that they can provide more space for muscle attachment. Why? Muscles are required for movement on land, so they require more space for attachment. And the next is compact feet with heavy pad in the terrestrial organism. You can see these are feet of elephant, and they are compact in comparison to its size of body. These are compact, that means having less surface area, and these are having pads so that they can move easily without any discomfort on the land. And here are the feet of dog. These are also compact, and these are having cushions or pads, so they will also help in comfortable walking on the ground. Okay, the next is fourth point, that is study of adaptive radiations or divergent evolution. And what is adaptive radiation, divergent evolution? As the name suggests, divergent, that will diverge from a point. So that is a point, and there is diversification in every single possible direction. So this is divergent evolution, starting from one point and radiating to different direction. That's why this is also termed as adaptive radiations. Radiations like solar radiation, that is sun, and radiations are moving, are emitting in different directions. And adaptive, these are radiations for adaptation, different kind of adaptations. Okay, so the best example is adaptive radiation in Galapagos finches. On the Galapagos Island, these are different species of finches which were discovered by Darwin and during his voyage, and according to their adaptation, according to every possible niche they have adapted. Okay, so some finches are insect eating. You can see these all are insect eating finches, so their beaks are accordingly modified. And then these are seed eating finches and their beaks are accordingly modified. You can see these are broader, okay, and stumpier. And here are cactus eating finches, so their beaks are pointed and slightly narrower and elongated. Okay, and these are fruit eating, birds and fruit eating finches, so their beaks are according to that. So this is all about the adaptation. So from the morphology of their beak, by viewing their shape and size and notchness and pointiness of their beak, you can estimate their food habits. So that is the functional morphology. Another example in adaptive radiation is the adaptive radiation of mammals, which is based upon locomotion. So starting from one ancestor, the organisms have adapted in different direction in all possible radiation. They have entered into different niches. Every possible ecological niche has been occupied by these radiating organisms. So this radiation is based upon their locomotion, so their limbs will be modified accordingly. So here first starting with this arboreal climbing squirrel, so it will live on trees, so accordingly it will be having legs like those so that it can climb on trees. Next is flying bat, so it has its four limbs modified into wings so that it can fly. So that is again a functional morphology. You can see that its morphology of four limbs have been changed so that it can perform the function of flight. And there is flying squirrel, that will be having patagium, that is the lateral side skin of its body. That means on lateral side of the trunk region, on both sides there will be fold of skin that will help in flight. Whenever this will jump from one tree branch to other tree branch, so that will open up like a parachute and that will help the squirrel to glide from one tree to other tree. So that is again a functional morphology. Then is arboreal hanging by sloth. It will hang on tree twigs, tree branches, and its limbs, forelimbs as well as hind limbs, they will be having a firm grip, so that will help in hanging. So that is again its limbs are performing a specific function according to their shape. So the shape of forelimbs and hind limbs of sloth have been modified to support its body weight. Also, if you talk about elephant, it will be having four legs which are very much well developed for walking and running. These are okay. So then next is fossorial or burrowing. So elephants are very fast walkers, they can walk very fastly. And then next are fossorial or burrowing. Moles, forelimbs and hind limbs are very much adapted for burrowing. They can dig a burrow with the help of their limbs because they are having claws at the tip of their toes, so they will help in burrowing the ground. Then this cheetah, that is having very muscular limbs which are very thin and very muscular. They are meant for fast running. Cheetah is the fastest runner. Then deer, that is also, its legs are also modified and adapted. They also have the morphology that will follow the running function, that will be adapted for running. Then seal, its forelimbs and hind limbs are modified into flippers that will help in swimming in the case of seal. If we talk about kangaroo, then it is having hind limbs which are elongated and more robust and muscular for hopping. So it will jump on it will leap on with the help of these limbs, and its forelimbs are smaller because these are rarely used, and these are used to hold on something, some food particle or something, food element. Okay, so this is all about the adaptive radiation of mammals. So moving next is biomechanical experiments. Application of mechanical principles to study function. So that is one more method of studying functional morphology. So you can see tendons are helpful for the movement of bones. Now basically that is an anatomical feature we are talking about, but still you can see what are tendons. Tendons are the structures, are connective tissue which will connect muscle to a bone. Now what is the function of tendon? Now see its position, see its morphology, see its position. It is attached on one end to the muscle and on other end it is attached to the bone. Now whenever this muscle will contract, okay, whenever this muscle will contract, it will pull this bone towards it. Okay, so whenever this will contract, because of attachment of this tendon, this forearm, it will be moved towards the upper arm. Okay. And take the another example of this muscle. Now if these are biceps and triceps basically, so when this muscle will contract, what will happen? Now there is another tendon, this blue color structure, which is connected to the other edge of this bone, forearm bone. So whenever this muscle will contract, it will pull the bone on the opposite direction, so arm will be straightened up. Whenever this muscle will contract, so arm will be straightened up. So that is the function of tendon. So its morphology, its placement will determine its function, whether the arm will be folded up on the upper arm or whether it will be moved away from the upper arm. That will be determined by the position of the tendon. So that is again a functional morphology which is based upon biomechanical principles or experiments. Another example is wings of birds and their flight mechanism. Now wings of birds, they are concave in shape, you can see. So that is a concave shape on the lower side, that has shown a little straighter, but that is not that much straight. Here is a little concave and the upper edge is convex. Now what is the benefit of such kind of shape? That there will be a thrust on the lower side because of the friction of the air, that will cause a thrust which will move the wing upward, and on the upper side there will be a suction created by the moving air. Now there is no obstacle on the upper side, so air will move swiftly over the wing without any friction. So there will be a suction which will lift the wing upward, and lower thrust because of friction that will also push the wing upward. So in both the cases the net force will be upward, and the wing will lift up in the air, and in this way the bird will fly. So this is how these feathers and these wings, they will help the bird to fly. So because on the upper side there is reduced pressure, on the lower side there is increased pressure because of friction. So reduced pressure will cause a suction that will pull the bird wing upward, and this increased pressure on the ventral side, that will create a thrust, upward thrust, a friction that will again move the bird wing upward. So in both the cases the bird will move upward, and that will be upliftment, and the aeroplanes are also based on the same principle. So this is how this concave shape of wing that will help in flight. So that is again functional morphology. Now why to study functional morphology? What is the need? Because evolutionary principles are involved. In our own lifetime, we have seen two examples, like we have discussed in previous slide, industrial mannerism in peppered moth, Biston betullaria. So here is a tree trunk. You can clearly observe that this light moth is clearly visible, whereas this dark moth is hidden. So it will not be visible to predators, which will not be able to locate it, and while this is very much visible, and predator will attack this. So according to Darwin's principle, this black moth will be the fittest in the case of industrial melanism. Okay, so it will survive. So that is the benefit of functional morphology, and that is an evolutionary process, that how these black moths have increased their population, how they have evolved. So evolutionary principles are involved, and they can be better explained if you study the functional morphology, because this is morphology of this moth that has led to its evolution. Its black color is responsible for its survival. Now the other example is length of proboscis in insects and nectary of flowers. Now both of these, they have shown co-evolution. What is co-evolution? Co-evolution is a type of evolution in which two structures which are complementing each other, they will grow side by side, like proboscis of insects and nectaries of flowers. So nectaries of flower, these are the elongated tube-like structure in which there is nectar along with the pollen grains at the tip of nectaries. So by sucking nectar, the insects, the pollinating insects, they will also help in the pollination of that flower and responsible for the population and survival of that particular flower species. So nectary length of flower and proboscis length. So you can see this wire-like structure, that is proboscis of insect. The insect will place this proboscis into the nectary of flower and will suck the nectar, and along with this process it will unknowingly pick up the pollen grains from here and will release those pollen grain on the other flower. Okay, so in this manner both flower and as well as this butterfly both will survive. And so that is again an evolutionary process which is involved because of functional morphology. If you will study the functional morphology, you can easily interpret the evolutionary processes, that means co-evolution of these two organisms. Okay, so next are a few examples which clearly shows the importance of studying functional morphology. Now here is a fish which is termed as porcupine fish or diodon. It has spines. Whenever it sees any predator or any danger, it will inflate up by engulfing lots of water and filling that water into its stomach, and it will inflate like a ball, and its spine, they will be erected on its surface. So it will be a spiny ball-like structure, and any predator will not dare to attack it. So it's beneficial for this fish, and that is its morphology that serve a function. Okay, it is a morphology of these spines which perform a protective function. And if you talk about amphibians, so in case of frogs, you can see hind limbs. Okay, these are muscular, and these are specially longer structures than that of the forelimbs. Forelimbs are smaller and hind limbs are longer. So these hind limbs, they perform a specific function of jumping. You can say leaping in the case of frog. Frog leaps. It can leap up to 1 meter because of the pressure, the upthrust which is given by these hind limbs, which are elongated, and these are folded upon itself whenever the frog is in squatting position. So it will jump whenever it will take off, and so it can jump up to 1 meter. So that is the functional morphology. This is function of these morphological structures which are termed as hind limbs. Now next are scales of reptiles. So here you are seeing in this picture that are scales of snakes. They have different kind of functions. That is an important morphological feature which has a very important functional aspect also. These are made of keratin. These are used for water retention because they will make the skin impermeable. Okay, because these organisms have to conserve water because these are terrestrial. They also protect organisms from predator because it is not easy for predators to eat up this organism with these scales on. And these also help snakes in movement, and because of these scales, snake can hold upon the imperfections of the ground. That means you can easily observe that ground is not as smooth as a marble floor, and it is having slight imperfection, and these small scales, they will hold on to those imperfections, and the snake will propel its body to the forward direction. This is the method how snake will move. Okay, and because of this feature, snake is unable to move or show locomotion on marble floors. Okay, because there are no imperfection on which these scales can put their grip on. Also, these are also helpful in warning signals in case of snakes. You can see here is a rattlesnake which is having a rattle on its tail, So this is tail of the organism which is having a rattle, and whenever it sees any predator or any danger, it will move this rattle and it will produce sound, because inside this rattle these are basically this tail, this rattle is having small pieces of scales inside it, and they will make a noise, so any predator will move away. So also that are modified scale, that rattle is a modified scale. Some lizards, they also follow camouflage from their morphology by changing their color that is similar to their background and shape also. So here you can see leaf tail gecko, okay, that look like a dried leaf structure. So here is the gecko, you can see here is the gecko. It is the mouth of gecko, and that is thorax and trunk region, and that is tail, and here are the legs. So this is gecko, you can see clearly. So that is helpful in camouflage. You can see it has totally mingled up with its surrounding, and it is beneficial in two ways. It can attack its prey silently, and it can also escape from the predators. So that is very much important. So that is all because of morphology that serves some function. That is why functional morphology study is important. Okay, the next is, you can see this is Varanus, which is also termed as Indian monitor lizard, and that is a reptile that is having lamellae on underside of its feet. So that is a lizard feet. You can see these lamellae. These will help in suction grasp of any substratum. So whenever this Varanus, it will place its feet on any substratum, it will hold on to it very firmly, very strongly, so that even a lot of pressure, even after applying a lot of pressure, you cannot move that Varanus from that particular space. And because of this property, because of only this very property, this organism has been used as a pet by the kings of India in the previous ancient time, and they have utilized those as you know, to move on the forts of enemy. Okay. Then next is how they have used these Varanus. They will tie a rope around their trunk region, and they will revolve them and will throw them at the fort wall, and they will hang on to the wall, and the soldiers can move upward by using the grasp and the grip of this Varanus. So they can move upward on the wall of fort. So then are fangs of the snakes. These are specific teeth which are designed for injecting poison into prey's body, and these are internally connected with parotid glands or labial glands, which are modified poison glands. And these fangs, they are having internally a poison duct which will lead poison from the poison gland to the fangs, and they will pierce the body of their prey with the help of these pointed fangs and will inject the poison into their body. So that is again a morphological structure which also serve an important function. Okay, that is why functional morphology is important. Now if we talk about feathers, feathers are used for flight, as we have discussed in previous slide, and these are also important for sexual selection. As you can see, these are very colorful feathers, and these play important role in mate choice. Female will choose, as you can clearly observe in the case of peacock, that dances to lure female, and it shows off its colorful feathers. Another morphological features which serves an important function is egg tooth, which is also termed as caruncle. You can see here this white structure, tiny structure on the tip of its mouth, and that is egg tooth. That is utilized to break the egg shell by the individual which is present inside the egg, by the young one, so that it can break the egg and come to the outside world. So that is the only function of this caruncle. It will shed off after some time of its hatching. So that is again a morphological structure which serves an important function. Eyes of birds, these are highly evolved, more evolved than the eyes of mammals, because they have to observe the things, observe the prey and predators from a height. These are eyes of hawk, and these are exceptionally keen in observing even the smallest prey like rat from several kilometers height. Okay, so that is again an important morphological feature which serves a very important function in the history of birds. Now bird feet and bird beaks. Beaks, as we have talked about in the case of Darwin finches, so different kind of beak shape and that provide different function. Like eagle, it is pointed and notchy, and its beak is pointed and notchy to tear the prey. Okay, and you can see the pelican, that is having a pouch like structure so that it can engulf the fish completely. Parrot, it is having a curved beak, and that is frugivorous. Woodpecker has a long and pointed beak so that it can peck on the wood, and flamingos, they are having a curved beak so that they can feed upon the larvas and some small animal in the field. Okay, so like that. And if you talk about bird feet, these are also different. Like mallard, that is having webbed feet, that means that will help in swimming, okay, propelling water backwards so that body can be propelled forward. Woodpecker, it is having perching kind of feet, which it can perch on the twig of any tree, or it can hold on to the tree trunk with the help of that. And then crow is again having perching type of feet so that it can hold upon to the tree twigs, tree branches. And same for the parrot. Ostrich is having this kind of feet so that it can walk on the ground, so that is much more flat and stumpy a little bit, so that it can walk and run on the ground. These are very fast runners, ostrich. So this was all again because of, so this is all again functional morphology. Then next is again, if we talk about mammals, hair are present for warmth. In nose and ear, they serve some other function to block foreign particles. And flippers, in case of whale, these are used for swimming. And papery wings in bat, these are used for flying. So again, it's a morphological structure which serves a function. And 5 toes in human hand, even every primate has 5 toes, and thumb is differently and oppositely placed so that you can hold on to something firmly and grasp can be fast. Kangaroos have a pouch for development. So pouch is again a morphological feature which serves an important function of development of its baby. Mammae for secretion of milk for the young ones. So this was all about functional morphology. Now the next is about some interesting fact. Moth tongues and orchids and Darwin, the predictive power of evolution. So it took nearly 150 years to prove that a suggestion by Charles Darwin in 1862 was correct. There was a fact which was suggested by, there was a speculation which was made by Charles Darwin in 1862, which was proved correct after 150 years. And after 20 years of Darwin's death, the moth was discovered. What he speculated, actually a friend of Darwin, he has gifted him a bunch of orchids, a series of orchids actually, and among those orchids there was one orchid which was termed as white star orchid. So because the flowers are white and are star shaped, so these are termed as white star orchids, and the scientific name is Agrecium sesquipedale. So this is white star orchid that is having, now Darwin observed that is having a exceptionally long nectary. You can see this is white flower, and this green portion, this pipe like small structure, elongated structure, that is nectary, which is filled with nectar, and nectar is only in the last 1 inch of the portion. Rest pipe is hollow, and here in the posterior most 1 inch 1 centimeter region there is present only nectar. So that is approximately 30 centimeter in length. That is an exceptional length for any nectary, and that is approximately 1 foot, you can say. So Darwin proposed that there must be some moth with the similar length of proboscis. So that must be the pollinator for this flower, and that must exist somewhere. So Darwin has speculated that in 1862 that an unusual animal, that means a moth, that must be present which can pollinate the species of orchid which is endemic to Madagascar, that means which is found only in Madagascar region. And this creature was not discovered at that time in 1862. It was discovered in 1903, some 20 years after Darwin's death. So this is the moth, and you can see its proboscis. It is of same length as that of this nectary. It is also 30 centimeter long, 1 foot in length. So that is very interesting fact. Now, because to honor Darwin, that he has speculated the existence of this moth even years before its discovery, he has speculated that such moth must exist in the Madagascar which can pollinate this, and that must be having a long proboscis approximately of the same length of that of the nectary. So this is the moth, and it was named as Darwin moth too. It was named after Darwin as Darwin's moth. So this was the interesting fact, and this shows the power of functional morphology study. So this is the morphology, that means this proboscis length is a morphological feature which serves an important function, that is this length of this nectary, and this moth is the only organism which can pollinate this flower. Okay, so thank you.